Welcome to AISD Extra. On this episode, PBK partner and architect Ron Bailey discusses the progress of the new Angleton ISD schools that are scheduled to break ground soon. We also sit down with Angleton High School athletic director and head football coach Jason Brittain to talk Wildcat athletics. And Superintendent Phil Edwards answers your questions and breaks down legislative funding. AISD Extra starts now. Here's Public Relations Director Hannah Chalmers.
We're here for our first ever AISD Extra podcast. It's a really special one because it is our first one. It's a good chance for us to really give our AISD community an insight, a look into what's going on in Angleton ISD, a better in-depth look at some of our programs and some of our projects. And so for our first episode, we have invited Mr. Ron Bailey from PBK here to talk to us a little bit about bond process of the things that we've gone through, as well as the architecture, because he does the architecture for us. But we also always have Mr. Edwards. Hi, Mr. Edwards.
Hello.
That was a great intro, Mr. Edwards. I love it. So would you like to actually introduce Ron?
We did a bond in 2019, and we went through a process of several companies coming in and presenting their products and their services to us. And at that time, we chose PBK, and that was for the 2019 bond project, which built the CTE Center, the Transportation Center, softball complex. And then when we went out for this bond in 2022, we kind of went through the same process, but just to be honest, we had built such a great working relationship with PBK, Ron and his team, that and the 2019 one was so successful that we went that way again. And so Ron, I want to let him tell a little bit about kind of what he does, what PBK does, and how long he's been doing this, because I think his experience is invaluable to this process.
Who is Ron Bailey?
Okay, well, I'll tell you. But I will say it's pretty exciting working with Angleton, because we've actually had the pleasure of doing it for many years, and several bond issues and master plans and so on. So we're just so appreciative of the continuing partnership and doing new buildings and all. So my name is Ron Bailey. I'm a partner with PBK. I've been with the firm going on 38 years now, and we have done nothing but specialize in schools, school design. Some people may not know this, but schools they're very particular in how you design a building, and we can talk about more of that later. But so we decided many years ago to specialize
Just in schools.
In just schools, yeah. And so, and I've been there, like I say, I was the 5th employee of PBK, I proudly say, and that's been 38 years ago.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about, our 2022 bond. And we're in the process of building 2 new schools, an elementary and a junior high. Can you guys, because I know people are probably really interested in this, either one of you or both of you give us the progress on those schools.
So I'll start. I think the first thing, and we can talk a little bit more about this, is the bond passed in November of 2022. It passed on a Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, we started the design work on those schools. And so we will break ground on November 1st to start those 2 schools. So it's been a year-long planning process to get what we're going to build. And so that's what's been happening the last year. Expectations, like I said, is break ground in November 1st. The goal is to get the schools done in June of 25 and to open them in August of 2025. There's a lot of work both on the construction part of that. I'm sure we'll continue to add some design elements to it as we go through and go, oh, this won't work, let's do this. It's a constant process as we go through this. We will get to the point where we meet right now every other week. Once school construction really gets going, we'll get to where we meet weekly about what's going on with all of those things. And so,
you want to expand on that process that you talked about,
so I'll let Ron kind of talk about the design process of schools. Of, hey, where do we start at? Because we start big and then narrow down. So he's much better to talk about that than I am, though.
Yeah, and so let's go back before the bond was even called.
Right.
There was an effort there called master planning, where there's different facets in there where you look at your existing buildings and determine maybe the needs that need to be taken care of, you know, in a bond issue. There's also, you look at growth and, you know, do you need to build new buildings? And if it's determined that you do, then there are some real tools in order to put together a budget without designing yet, but put together a budget so that you can put that in the bond issue to get it approved. So when the bond was passed, the public said, yes, we do want these facilities. That's kind of where we were. I always call it 30,000 feet up in the air looking down. You know, it's just big picture. We just want to be sure that there's enough square footage in there to accomplish what Angleton will want to do, and then of course money there in order to build that square footage. So when the bond, and I mean that's not an exaggeration, the bond passed, we had a meeting the next day. Okay, let's start talking about what are we going to do. So the different steps, again, remember we're 30,000 feet in the air. Now we want to start getting closer and closer to the actual design, and so we have a series of meetings with folks. You call it a design committee. It's usually set up of some of the folks that are going to live in that facility.
So your teachers,
yeah,
your principals,
teachers,
absolutely.
and of course
their input's invaluable in that, for sure.
Sometimes, you know, you might even have a student or two in there because the way they view what's being discussed is very different from what we view, and so you get good input from everybody. But every time you meet, we introduce or ask about more detail. You know, what do you need? And so finally, by the end of the design, we have a good idea of what the building is going to look like, what the materials are, absolutely how many rooms are going to be in there and what the rooms look like, and the configuration of those rooms. And it goes to the board for their approval. Once the board approves it, we call it design development. Then it goes into what we say construction documents, and that's the very labor-intensive part of our job, where we'll have a team. In this case, we had an elementary school and a middle school simultaneously being designed and drawn. So we actually had two teams that were working on it, and upwards of four months or so of construction documents, putting all the detail in there so that the contractor can put it out to bid. And I love to use this as an example. If you looked around this room, let's say the door, for example, what's the door made of? That's the material. How many hinges does the door have? What color are those hinges? All that has to be in the drawings and the specifications, or else the contractor won't know what to bid. So it's intensive work that we have to go through. Once that is done, then it goes out to bid, which is where we are now. And the bids come in
October, I can tell you it's
18th?
Hey, October 18th is when they come in. That's exactly
18th.
right.
And then
So
all
the
goes
day
well.
after this episode. I'm just kidding.
And so all goes well, then it will go to the board for approval, and then construction will start in November. So right around the corner, yeah.
Do you want to expand on that anymore?
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the design looks like of these two schools, because it's a little unique, but it's something I think we're excited about. Is even though these are two different schools, they're going to be connected, and so it'll flow. And it's a two-story schools. Both schools will be 2 stories. They're separated by a wall. There will only be one door to get from one school to the other school. That will be in the cafeteria. There will be 2 separate cafeterias, so kids won't eat together. But the reason we did that is, one of the things we got hit with inflation. Construction costs just went through the roof. And so we had to do some things to, how can we save some money, spend some money efficiently, and get the square footage that we need for the kids that are going to go in there. Well, part of the way we did that was build one building that has one central plant. That's your HVAC, your heating, your water, your
And that
sewage.
saves money right there,
That
too.
saves money instead of having to build 2. And then one kitchen. So even though there's 2 separate eating spaces, it's one kitchen. And that saves a lot of money. And so that helped us be able to fit in the things that we wanted to fit into the school.
And then the challenge is if we could repeat these for the future, because Angleton is growing,
Right.
design it such to where you could peel those 2 buildings apart and just build
Make
at
it
the elementary
stand
site.
Yeah.
And that's what was done. And it was
There's
very
a lot
challenging.
of future thinking with that.
Absolutely. So we've already what was done with the elementary school is, hey, we need to be able to put an elementary school on 15 acres. So design so that it will fit on 15 acres. The thought being, if we have to take down an old school and put up a new school, that we would need 15 acres. So let's take our oldest school in the district, Northside. Hey, we have a field of open field by Northside. Can that design fit in that area so that you could be building the school possibly while kids are continuing to go to the old school? Once you move into the new school, then you can tear down the old school. And so there's as we're going out looking north of town where the home growth is really going to start taking off, and we're talking to landowners, developers of how much land we need, we can say, if we're building an elementary school, we need 15 acres because on a 50, and it needs to be designed this way because our school fits on that plot. It also will save money for the district because we won't be going through that design process every time and spending that time and that money doing that. We just have a product and we set it down. We may move a few things around to make it unique, but in general, it will do that. So that was a big part of the design as well. I think, and then just going back, I think one of the things that we really got from the community when we designed these schools is the need to have classes separated, grades separated, especially 6th grade from the other 7th and 8th grade. And so what you'll see in this is on the bottom floor of the elementary school, and it'll just move from right to left, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade on the bottom floor, on the top floor, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. Then you'll see an office area, library, and then it will go into the junior high. You'll see a 6th grade wing, and then the 6th grade wing is separated from everybody else by the gym, the fine arts, the libraries, the cafeterias, the CTE rooms. And then at the very far end of the building is 2 stories of 7th and 8th grade classes. And so that separation of 6th grade, although technically part of the middle school, kind of geographically looks more like the elementary school. And again, we got that way because when we had community meetings about what we wanted the school to look like, that we heard that a lot. And so that's part of that design process that we put into that.
And a lot of that's the developmental ages of
Right.
the 6th graders and why the parents had that input from
Absolutely.
the beginning.
Hannah, I was in our junior high yesterday, and I walked in a 6th grade room and I look at those kids, and then I walked in an 8th grade room and look at those kids, and they are vastly different.
Yeah. And you touched on the design. I want to hit on this because I know people worry about this, but truly the schools are separate.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there will not be like mingling of the
There
elementary
is
with
not.
the junior high.
So it is designed for pickup spaces, parking lots,
Right.
buses. All that stuff is
The
completely
front doors
separate.
are different, all of the above.
Completely
Yes.
opposite sides of the
2
building.
different offices, one for elementary, one for junior.
And I believe soon after this podcast drop, we'll have some pictures to put out on our website that people can see what that will look like.
Talk about, because you mentioned how the school is designed, and you said something about like drop off. I want to hear about the traffic flow and even the locations of the school because
Okay.
people may not realize where they're going in.
Right. So the location is, we worked with the Ashland development about the 2,000 home development that they're going to build off of 521 and Anchor Road, kind of across the street from that Dollar General and that Love's area. Our schools will actually sit closer to 520, will sit on 521 at the north end of that. If you drive down 521 now, coming off Anchor Road, and you get past the little convenience store, you'll look to the right and you'll see a gated area and some work going on back there, and a little gravel road. That gravel road will split our junior high in half by the time. So that's where that property is going. Yeah. And I forget what was the other.
There's circulation around the side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then there will be. So the only. We're also doing, and Ron can talk a little bit more, TxDOT will be coming in, and so 521 will be expanding, will be getting wider. There are going to be traffic lights put out there. Buses will go into the front of the school and pick up, where parent traffic will come in from behind and be separate. And we've built lots of driveway, paveway to stacking is what they call it, so that cars, they're not stacked on the road to go in and get their students picked. You drive around some of our elementary schools right now, like Rancho and West Side, they're stacking on the sides of roads. PBK did a great job of designing driveways so that cars can and building them wide so they can stack them 2 and 3 apart.
Because you do have to remember there is going to be a subdivision also
Absolutely.
going in there, which is increasing the traffic and all that as well.
Yeah.
It's very important, the number of kids and parents that are picking up their kids, and how does that impact the roads around a school.
Right.
so that it doesn't just completely shut down a development or so on. So we had one of those reports done, and they gave a lot of recommendations on how to lay out the stacking and where to locate the drop-offs and so on. And then it's worth mentioning one more time, we have separated auto drop-off from bus drop-off for safety. It's also good in just the way the building functions, where you have cars on one side and buses on the other, but it also makes it much more safer. And so these two new schools have that in there.
And Hannah, I want to say one of the things that we will also do just from an operations standpoint is starting next year, we will drastically divide start and end times for these two schools. And so you'll start our secondary schools about an hour earlier than our elementary schools. So
ooh, that's you're just dropping some news. Maybe Mr. Edwards, they don't know about that yet.
But what that will do at these two schools will make traffic and kids getting out of school, well, they just pretty much will not be around each other as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things that we have to consider, and we got very close this last time to doing it, was we have some elementary schools and a current junior high that are two elementary schools that are 75 years plus, north side and south side, and a junior high that's 50 plus years old. And so at some point we're going to have to do something to address those facilities, whether that means building up and tearing down or renovating, but that's going to have to be addressed to get those buildings to be able to serve the kids that we need to academically. So I don't suspect Angleton's going to be stopping passing bonds anytime soon and stopping addressing school facilities anytime soon as well.
Got to look at the future. Thank you both it was a great topic, very interesting to me. So I'm sure so many people will find it interesting, and I don't think that they really understand what goes behind the making of a school. And I think this was really cool to get that out there. So thank you so much, Ron. Mr. Edwards, as always, thank you for joining us. He's here all the time, folks. I can't shake him. But again, thank you both.
You bet.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, thank you, Ron, for coming and doing this. We very much appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
We're going to switch gears now. We've actually want to spotlight one of our programs, and this episode we're going to hit athletics and football. I want to introduce our first guest for this, Coach Jason Brittain. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Coach, and then also introduce our student athlete.
Well, I've been here since 2011. I came in as a defensive coordinator, and I coached football and track, and I taught U.S. history, and then I did some Edgenuity, and in 2018 I was fortunate enough to become the head coach and the athletic director. My family, kids go to school here. My wife works in the district, and it's home to us now.
I get hugs on the sidelines from your boys, I know. Now introduce our student athlete.
So I brought with me today Amias Martinez.
Amias, not Emmaus.
It's Amias. He's been in our program, since he was in junior high. Always a kid that's overachieved, not only on the field, but in the classroom, in the community. He's truly what we want our athletes to be. He's a great kid. He does it the right way. Makes it really easy and fun to coach. So we wanted to make sure that we brought Amias with us today. And
gotta feel good hearing
so
that,
everybody can see
Amias,
him a little
right?
bit.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I grew up here in Angleton. I've always been a Wildcat. Even in Little League, I never went to any other places. I've always been a Wildcat. I always wanted to be a Wildcat. This program's amazing. Even starting back in junior high with the whole school, I'm a little guy, but I got that heart. So I made varsity my sophomore year, and was up from then on.
Yeah, and now a senior, so
Yeah,
you're a
now
leader.
senior. Yes, ma'am.
A leader, all right. Let me hear from both of you a little bit on, what does athletics do for kids? What does it give them in terms of success in the future, and even while they're in school?
Okay. I think number one, kids want routine. Kids like knowing kind of where they stand and having a routine day to day, and that keeps them focused on what they need to do. I think the big thing from athletics, it helps kids be a part of something maybe bigger than themselves. It makes them have to understand people are relying on them, and so when people rely on you, you got to get up every day. You got to put your shoes on. You got to go to work and know that people are counting on you. And so I think through athletics we give that platform for kids. We give them opportunities to work through adversity, just like they are when they become adults. They're going to have to wake up, put their shoes on, and go to work, and people are counting on them, regardless if it's their coworkers or, kids at the house or their spouse. Somebody's counting on them. So I think, athletics puts that platform in place for them in high school and junior high.
What about you? Do you feel the same, or?
Yes, ma'am. So like athletics, it really teaches you like to have like discipline in your life. It teaches you responsibility, and even when you grow up, like you said, you have to wake up to go to work, put your shoes on, and I feel like if you go through this program, you're gonna learn to always get up, go do it, because when you're older, you're gonna have a family, you have to take care of them. If you don't go to work, it's gonna be hard to take care of them. And even now, like during boot camp, that's probably the one time you have to like be working as a team, leading, having responsibilities, having to be there. You have to be pretty much perfect to get out of boot camp. So that's probably like the main part where you kind of click with your team, you get out of your comfort zone, and it teaches you way more than just being in sports. It's more to like, it helps you in life.
Coach Brittain, I want to hit on athletics in general with you, and you can be specific to football too, if you want to. Every year, it doesn't start August, right? How's that planning process every year going?
I mean, really, the planning it's a year-round process. Obviously, in our athletic program, we have around 1,400 athletes when you count 6th grade pre-athletics all the way up. We've got about 50 coaches and obviously support staff that goes with that. And then with athletics, you're dealing with every single program or every department. So it's security, the business office, the PR department, child nutrition.
Thank you for my shout out.
Yep, there you go. Campus principals, teachers. So there's not really a department that we don't deal with on a daily basis. A lot of people ask me, in the spring, you have a lot of downtime. I mean, the spring, I'm the head football coach, but in the spring is the craziest for the athletic director because there's so many sports going on at the same time, and you're juggling that while getting ready for the next school year because you're already, you're in football off season, but you're going through planning for the next school year for all your athletics, regardless if it's scheduling, if it's working with HR on the hiring, evaluations, all that stuff is going on. You're getting kind of at the end of the year, so you're dealing with all your finances. So definitely the springtime is a big planning time for us. The planning happens year-round, but you're going to see the majority of the action with that's going to be in the springtime.
Guys, I want to thank you for joining us for this very first ever AISD Extra podcast. So y'all were our first little group on this. I
made
appreciate
history
it.
in my eyes.
Nobody
can ever take it away from us. We were the very first ones ever.
You're the first student ever on the AISD Extra.
Oh, wow.
That's going down in history. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Edwards, I want to dive a little bit deeper now that we talked a lot about bond and the building of schools. Talk about funding, but also really hit more on the tax rate and how bonds affect tax rate.
Okay, so let me talk about first our 2019 bond that built the CTE Center, softball field, new transportation center. That bond was for $90 million. By the time we got all the projects done, including all the changes we wanted to do and everything, we had about $11 million left over. So we had $11 million in savings. We've used some of that savings to go into the old Benchmark building and start to renovate that so that we can make that a AISD office facility and warehouse. We expect to have that done in May of 2024 at the end of this school year. So the great thing about the 2019 bond was it did not raise taxes at all. In fact, it lowered the tax rate consistently every year during that time. The 2022 bond, we've started off the same way. We initially sold $70 million worth of bonds. That will probably carry us about through this summer, and then we'll have to go out and do another bond sale. It's much like getting a loan, and so you pay an interest rate when you pay these things back. We got a little interest rate of about 3%, and we're going to be hopeful that interest rates continue to start dropping or continue to drop a little bit, so we can get a good rate when we do this again. That all being said, one of the things we were able to do this year, even though we passed the bond in 22, was drop the tax rate. And so overall, because of what the state did and what we did, it was about a 20-cent tax rate reduction. And so our goal is to continue to do that. And we're able to continue to do that because more homes get built in the area, in our ISD. Those people then have to pay the property taxes from those new homes, and that drives up our tax rate, which allows us to lower the tax rate for everybody because we kind of have a budget that stays pretty similar or close in cost per kid. And so we're hopeful that we can continue to do that. So we talked in the finally, I'll just say this, we talked in the last segment about building new schools. The goal will be to continue to be able to do that. We'll be able to go out for bonds, not raise the tax rate, lower it in some years, and build new schools, either replacing old schools or building new schools for growth that we'll need to do.
And tax rate not to be confused with us setting a property tax value.
That's right. That is done. I always tell, and this is something I think is really important that I don't think ever gets really communicated. Right. Your property taxes are a result of 3 entities that play a part in that. The first part that's played is the taxing district, and ISD is a taxing district. What we do is set the tax rate. How much per $100 is that rate going to be? That's all we do. The appraisal district appraises your property and says your property is worth this much money. The thing that you don't hear a lot is the state of Texas, the comptroller's office does set values that says the appraisal district has to reach these values. They have to reach a certain, and they have to match. And if they don't match, then penalties come in. And so I know people out there like to say it's just the school district or it's just the appraisal district or it's this or that. It is a function of all 3. All 3 play a part in that. We set the tax rate. Appraisal district appraises the values of the house. The state comptroller's office says to the appraisal district, you must set the values this high. And that's how we get there.
Interesting. Those are always some great questions that come out of any of this bond process. I want to lead us into a little segment that we have that we solicit some questions from our potential listeners out there. I hope we have a lot out there.
At least 1 or 2 now?
At least 1 or 2. We did get a couple questions. We won't be able to touch on all the questions we get, but I do want to ask you a couple from our potential new listeners. One of them is, what is AISD doing to help GT students through high school? Thinking that in their question, GT stops at 8th grade and then it only offers accelerated classes.
So let me just this is a great opportunity to talk about the GT program in the whole. So a student can qualify for GT, I believe, in 1st grade and could stay in GT during that time. Our program at the elementary school looks different than what it does at the junior high, looks a little different than what it does at the high school. Still a GT program at all 3 phases of this. One of the things we did do at the elementary school this year, if your kid was in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade and they were in GT, they went to Frontier. With growth happening to the district and an expanding of our GT program, we now provide GT services at a student's home campus. So currently right now we're in the 1st year of that. 4th and 5th grades will stay at the campuses they were at, but we will slowly phase that out. So if your student is GT, they'll go to their home school and get their services there. At the junior high, we've expanded GT services a little bit. They get placed in honors classes or have the ability to be placed in honors classes. And Ms. Terrell and her team have put together a GT time during the school day that those kids can get the services there. That's different than what it was in the past. They also do outside class projects, those kinds of things as well. At the high school, the services that a high school student can get in GT are honors classes, AP classes, dual credit classes. Those things meet the qualifications for GT students, and that's how they are served through GT services through those types of classes that they can take. So again, honors classes, AP classes, dual credit classes. And I know our next podcast, Anna, we're going to talk about more in depth about dual credit, but that's how GT kids receive their services in high school.
And GT, for those people who don't understand or know what GT is, it's gifted and talented.
Gifted and talented, yeah.
And it's, again, just servicing kids and their individual needs academically.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Another question we got from a listener, actually same listener, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and give that out. What pathway should an incoming freshman choose if they are wanting to do biomedical engineering? with a background. They have both medical pathway and engineering pathway.
So that's a great question, and I love that we're sitting here in our CTE building answering that question. You know, we opened this building last year. We have lots of great programs here. We have welding, culinary arts, cosmetology, health sciences, engineering, computer science, ROTC. Our business classes are all housed in this building. All students, and we always encourage students to get on a pathway to work their way through CTE classes and possibly get a certification to go right into work or go on to college. A student who you're describing would probably be looking to go into college. And so the pathways we would look for a student like that would either be to possibly look into the engineering pathway. And a pathway is a series of classes you take over 4 years. So you might start off in a principles of engineering and then go to an engineering 1, say an engineering 2 class, then a robotics class. That would be a 4-year pathway into that. One of the other things that a student like this may choose to go into is a health science pathway. Again, you would get into a principles class and then a series of classes designed to explore careers and skills in health sciences. The best thing I can tell you to do is, if this is what you're wanting to do, would be to go and speak with your counselor at the school. We also have a CTE counselor who can probably best guide you to that. It's great when kids have an idea of what they want to do and quite possibly where they want to go and do that, because then we can tailor a high school curriculum or course guide for them over 4 years that can set them up to be successful in wherever that university is. And there's a lot that goes into that, but we can individualize those pathways for the kids when we do this.
Yeah, because yes, there might be 2 pathways that could work. That counselor can actually help narrow down exactly which one would be beneficial to that kid.
Right. And that's also a perfect example of not just the career tech pathways, what classes we offer here, but somebody who's going into biomedical engineering is going to want to do probably dual credit. And so that's classes we take with Brazosport that a kid can get college credit for, and before they ever step onto the campus of that university, and have some credits for that as well. And so again, all of that can be done by our counselors. They do a great job of designing these pathways for our students.
Well, we hit our deep dive for the segment and our question segment. I do want to do a shout out to a couple people that you may not see on camera, that we do have this being recorded on camera as well, and who you haven't heard on the mic. That is our fantastic student engineer, who's a senior here, Des Parrish, who's been helping us out. So he is technically our engineer for the podcast. And then our multimedia coordinator, Alex Radow, who is our producer. Want to give them a shout out. And do you want to say anything?
I just want to say absolutely. I'm glad we have the people behind the scenes that can make me look good, because that's really hard to do. But I do appreciate them and the job they've done. They're fantastic.
Absolutely. They have put in a lot of work to help us make this successful, and hopefully continue to make these successful as we go forward. This is the end of our inaugural first ever AISD Extra podcast. Do you have anything last to say? I
just want to say I've really enjoyed doing this. I'm excited that we're getting into this media for our community. Hopefully people will listen. They'll get some more information about what's going on in the district, both in this case today was about school building, school design, what goes into all of those things. And then highlighting our student and our student programs. I know we did athletics today, and so that's exciting. I think, again, I'm hopeful and excited that this will take off and people will listen to this to learn more about AISD. Last thing I'll say is send us questions. If there's things you want to know, send us questions. We'll be happy to look into addressing those for you.
And we'll get that out there to the community so they have the option.
Absolutely. So, but Hannah, you've done a great job. Your department does a great job, and so we're very thankful. And
I get to keep my job.
You get to keep your job. Day, absolutely. And this has been really enjoyable. So I think this is great.
I am showing that I am able to keep my job a little bit longer, everybody. I just want to say thank you for joining us. This has been Hannah Chalmers with our AISD Extra. Stay excellent, Wildcats.